ASVAB Paragraph Comprehension Test Number 4. Grammar Hero. You now have 22 minutes to answer 11 questions. In the summer of 1929, people in the United States began to spend less. Thus, more products were building up in storage for manufacturers and stores. Debts began to increase. Stock market prices began to climb. A stock is a share or piece of a company which ordinary citizens can buy. They may or may not receive earnings on that stock depending on the business trends. On October 4, 1929, stock owners began selling their stocks in great quantities. The stock market was said to have collapsed. The day was called Black Thursday. On Black Tuesday, 5 days afterwards, millions more stocks were sold. Millions of shares couldn't be sold and had no value anymore. Many people who had put money into these stocks lost everything. Factories slowed down because people didn't have money to buy products. Fewer workers were needed, so many people became unemployed. Wages for the working people went down. Many people lost their houses because they had no money to pay their mortgages. These conditions spread around the world. The period from 1929 to 1939 was known as the Great Depression. A depression is a time of a great downturn in business profits. By 1931, 6 million people were out of work. Many had to try to get free food by standing in lines at various soup kitchens provided by those who could help. Businesses collapsed. Farmers couldn't sell their crops and left them in the fields because they couldn't afford to harvest them. Beginning in 1930, people started to withdraw all their savings from their bank accounts because they were afraid the banks would fail and did this for 3 more years. Many banks went out of business. President Herbert Hoover didn't think that the federal government should get involved in trying to solve the situation. However, in the fall of 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected president. By Inauguration Day in March, all banks had been told to close for 4 days, a bank holiday. New banking laws would be passed and only the strong banks would reopen. President Roosevelt spoke regularly on the radio to encourage the people of the United States. These talks were called fireside chats. During his first 100 days in office, the president passed laws to try to get business going again and to help farmers with their crops. He created the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Commission, to protect the money people put into banks in the future. He also set up the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, to prevent a serious stock market crash from happening again. President Roosevelt put into place a program called the New Deal. Included in this program was the TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, which involved building dams and providing water for the Tennessee Valley. The WPA, the Works Progress Administration, hired thousands of men to work on projects around the country. Beginning in 1933, the economy began to improve and did so for 3 years. In 1937, another serious downturn occurred and wiped away much of the progress which had been made. Hardships throughout Europe made it easier for Adolf Hitler to rise to power in Germany. In 1939, Hitler's troops began to invade neighboring countries. The United States then began manufacturing military supplies and equipment. Many more jobs were now available. The United States wanted to support its friends Germany and France. They had been invaded by Hitler's forces. After the United States was attacked at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, in 1941, production and manufacturing began to increase and unemployment went down to what it was before the Great Depression. 1. Which of the following men was president at the beginning of the Great Depression? A. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. B. Herbert Hoover. C. Woodrow Wilson. D. Harry Truman. 2. Which of the following is a true statement? A. Herbert Hoover wanted the federal government to help the situation during the Depression. B. Herbert Hoover gave a lot of the government's money to help struggling Americans. C. Herbert Hoover didn't think the federal government should get involved with the troubles of the Depression. D. Herbert Hoover got people back to work by various programs he started. 4. Which of the following events pushed the United States into full manufacturing production and brought unemployment way down? A. The attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. B. The election of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. C. The creation of the TVA. D. The creation of the SEC. 3. Which of the following is the name given to the day of the stock market crash in 1929? A. Desperate Monday. B. Terrible Tuesday. C. Black Thursday. D. Fatal Friday. 5. Which of the following is not a fact about conditions during the Great Depression? A. Millions of people lost their jobs. B. Many people lost their homes. C. Farmers could help out the poor in the cities with free food. D. Many banks had to close permanently. 6. Which of the following is the name for President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's weekly talks to the American people? A. Evening Reports. B. Saturday Morning Talks. C. Fireside Chats. D. People to People. If you need to refer back to the text, please click the link in the description of this video. After World War II, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, moved to take over the governments of the nations it had conquered. It replaced them with governments favorable to them. The United States and its allies in Europe wanted to stop the spread of communism. In 1947, they put together a plan to give financial aid to friendly countries to help rebuild after the war. It was called the Marshall Plan. After a coup in 1948, when the Soviets took over the formerly democratic country of Czechoslovakia, the United States and its European allies decided to join together for common security against the Soviet bloc. After the war, the city of Berlin was divided into 4 sectors, one each for the Soviet Union, Britain, France, and the United States. In June 1948, the USSR cut off any access to the city. The Western Allies had to send in supplies by dropping them from the air. On April 4, 1949, the United States and 11 other Western countries joined to make a treaty of security stating that if any one of them was attacked, the others would come to their defense. This organization was called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. It was signed in Washington, D.C. The first Secretary General, leader of NATO, said that his goal was to keep the Russians out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. The original countries were Belgium, Canada, Britain, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Portugal, Norway, and the United States. This alliance reflected a big change in American foreign policy. The United States had formally become joined to countries in Europe for the first time since the 1700s. Between 1966 and 1995, France was not a member because the country didn't want to contribute its military forces. When the United States and its allies allowed West Germany into NATO, they strictly limited the size of its military. When NATO was discussing allowing West Germany to join NATO in 1955, the Soviets threatened to make an alliance in Eastern Europe if this happened. West Germany joined, however. The Soviets did just what they threatened. The Warsaw Pact was signed soon after in 1955 because the Soviets were afraid that the Germans might become strong again as they had before World War II. This pact was an agreement between the USSR and Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, and Romania. This group stayed together until all the communist governments in Eastern Europe were abolished in 1989 and 1990. Just like NATO, the Warsaw Pact stipulated protection for any member attacked. The Soviets could gain greater control over its fellow members and keep them from becoming independent. The Soviets used the excuse of following the terms of the Warsaw Pact when they used the military in 1956 to stop a revolt in Hungary. They did the same in 1968 when they used force in Czechoslovakia. For the next 40 years, NATO became the force for protection for the West against the USSR. In time, Greece, Federal Republic of Germany, Turkey, and Spain joined NATO. During the late 1990s, NATO gained some new member countries in Eastern Europe. The Russian Federation was unhappy about this. The action brought about more tension between them and West. Today, NATO contains 29 member countries in North America and Europe. Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, which provides for assistance to any member country which is attacked, was used only one time, after the attacks in New York City on September 11, 2001. Troops from NATO were sent to Afghanistan. Montenegro is the latest country to join, in June 2017. 7. Which of the following was the name of the program after World War II to assist the countries in Western Europe which had been badly damaged by war? A. The Truman Program. B. The Marshall Plan. C. The Restoration Program. D. The War Restoration Program. 8. Which of the following countries was the driving force behind the Warsaw Pact? A. France. B. United States. C. USSR. D. Germany. 9. Which of the following sections of the North Atlantic Treaty provides that if one member is attacked, all of the others will respond? A. Section 13. B. Article 5. C. Article 2. D. Article 10. 10. Which of the following is the latest country to join NATO? A. Monaco. B. Sierra Leone. C. Montenegro. D. Andorra. 11. In which of the following years was NATO founded? A. 1951. B. 1949. C. 1965. D. 1932. If you need to refer back to the text, please click the link in the description of this video. Answer key: 1B, 2C, 3C, 4A, 5C, 6C, 7B, 8C, 9B, 10C, 11B.
Konnichiwa.